Danganronpa is a game that has its fair share of questionable aspects. For those unfamiliar, the series involves a robotic teddy bear forcing talented teenagers to participate in a killing game, in which they must kill each other in order to survive and escape. And while I would love to talk about the main events of the games and how crazy the series is, I would instead like to focus on another aspect of the game: toxic masculinity. What? I know, it sounds crazy to say. In a series about murder, I want to focus on a nitpick I have about the characters in a specific chapter. But genuinely, I think it's important to talk about how, in spite of their isolation from the world and the circumstances of the game, the characters are affected by concepts like toxic masculinity. I would first like to bring up Chihiro Fujisaki. Chihiro is a programmer and a crossdresser and, though he identifies as male, he wants people to think he is female. The reason for that is that, as a kid, he was constantly bullied for being weak, fragile, and overall more traditionally feminine than masculine. And so he believed that if people thought of him as a girl, rather than a guy, he wouldn't be bullied for not fulfilling typical gender traits. Now, aside from the questionable approach to a cross-dressing character, the main takeaway is that Chihiro is severely lacking in traditional masculinity and, as such, seeks shelter and femininity. Compare that to his classmate Mondo Wada. An aggressive biker with an attitude, Mondo strives to be as much of a man as possible. What does he define as being a man? Well, obviously, it's defending the weak, respecting others, being brave, killing your brother, hanging out in the sauna, just normal guy things. Okay, it's a little disingenuous to just say that he killed his brother, so let me explain. Mondo, as the leader of a biker gang, became the leader after his brother resigned. To prove he was worthy of taking his brother's place, Mondo challenged his brother to a race. During the race, Mondo wanted so desperately to prove his manliness that he drove full speed into oncoming traffic. Genius, I know. Right as Mondo was about to be run over, his brother pushed him out of the way, sacrificing himself in the process. While a rational person would say, wow, his striving to be a man ended up killing his brother, he should tone it down a bit. Mondo continues to be overly masculine, using his manliness to comfort him, instead of accepting that it's a problem. Being quick to anger, punching people, all because he takes comfort in knowing that he is the manliest person around him. So here we have the dichotomy of someone so insecure about their masculinity that they become extremely feminine, and someone so insecure about their masculinity they try very hard to be extremely masculine. And while it's all calm for a while, it reaches a breaking point in Chapter 2. Chihiro, tired of pretending to be a girl, decides it's time to reveal his gender to the group. However, because he is very shy, he seeks counsel from the bravest, most manly guy he knows, Mondo. But when Chihiro reveals that he, someone very feminine, wants to face his problems head-on, Mondo feels upstaged. After all, if he's someone very masculine, can't face his problems head-on, how could the weak and dainty Chihiro do it? So, in a moment of insecurity, Mondo does the only thing he can think of to prove to himself that he's still manly. He kills Chihiro. What a shock that his desire to be manly led to the death of two innocent people, and later his own execution. Pretty cut and dry example of toxic masculinity, right? The societal expectation to be manly leads to their deaths. We learn that manliness is bad and move on. Everything's good. Except that characters in-universe continue to praise manliness after the cautionary tale plays out in front of their eyes. Mondo is remembered as a manly guy who, even in his darkest moments, held his morals above all. Kiyotaka Ishimaru, in the wake of Mondo's death, also uses manliness as a coping mechanism. Heck, in the future games, characters praise manliness. In Danganronpa V3, a game released in 2017, Kaito Momota has the same be a man attitude that Mondo had, and it's seen as a positive trait. Throughout the series, traditional masculinity is held as a positive, a goal meant to strive for, despite also being the reason 3 characters ended up dying in the first game. It's less a problem about flawed characters and more about this flawed ideology making its way into the series, and even ironically being endorsed despite being a literal motive for murder. I adore this series, and recently more people have been getting into it, but it hurts knowing that the series endorses something as negative as toxic masculinity. Again, that sounds ridiculous to say of a series about teenagers murdering each other, but allowing something problematic just because it seems ridiculous is the same as normalizing it.